Hi guys, welcome to this new video on Node Express. In this video, I'll be making this awesome, cool looking weather application, and I'll be using a third-party API to fetch the data for this weather. And it's not just about this building this UI and fetching the data. I'll be showing you how we can create an awesome professional folder structure in Node Express so that if you need to create a large application that contains multiple pages, multiple functionalities in it, you can follow up the same folder structure of Node Express to build those large applications. Okay, so let me show you the features included in this app. If I refresh the page, you can see that it's showing loading, and then it's going to call an API, which I'm using the third-party API, and it's going to show me these details of the weather, the icon, the temperature, the description, and the city. And also, obviously, I had to allow my browser to detect my current location. And you might be using Mac, Windows, Linux. You might need to allow your browser from your system preferences to actually detect your current location. And if I enter any other city in the whole world or hit enter or click on the search button, it's going to call the API again, and it's going to fetch the data icon, this temperature, description, and the city of that particular city which we have entered. I can enter the London over here, and it's going to fetch the data for this particular city. So I'm actually using the openweathermap API, and this API actually gives us a lot of other details as well. So currently I'm only using these icon, temperature, description, and the city, but you can customize your UI yourself and use the other details as well. The purpose of this video is to show you how we can actually build a proper folder structure to build such kind of application directly from the Node Express and load this awesome UI from the backend, and also how we can call APIs and customize our UI according to that. I actually created the similar kind of tutorial in my other channel few years back, but that tutorial did not include detecting the current location, and also that was using the old version of Node Express. In this video, I have actually included some extra features, and also I'm using the latest version of Node to build this application. Before moving forward, I just want to let you know that if you want to learn how you can create REST APIs, how you can design database, and all related features to build large backend application, go check out my playlist with name Node Express MongoDB 2023 Bootcamp on my channel. So let's get started. I have opened up an empty folder in VS Code, and I'm going to create few folders. First of all, the empty folders, and I'm going to name it public. Let's create another folder src, and then I'm going to create utils. Let's create the last folder, and I'm going to name it templates. Okay, and I'm going to initialize my project with npm init. Make sure you have latest version of Node installed in your system from its website. Along with it, the npm will be automatically installed. Once it's installed, you can run npm init -y, and it will not ask you any questions. So I'll hit enter. It will create a new file, package.json. For now, just ignore this. These are just the default key value pairs added in this file. All right, and now I'm going to install few of the dependencies in my package. And first of all, I need an express, so I'll write npm install express, and it's going to download from the internet and add its reference in the dependencies key over here, you can see, and this is the version it has installed. Okay, and then I need to have the npm install hbs, and I can add a space and install the other packages as well. So npm install hbs, I can have the nodemon, which will be automatically rerunning our server whenever we will be making changes in our project. So then I'm going to add the request package. So it's going to install all of these three packages from the internet and add its reference. And also you can see that it has actually created the node underscore modules folder over here. And these are all the dependencies I've just installed, including the dependencies of these packages as well. All right, so we have set up our basic folder structure and these files and installed different dependencies that we will be needing to actually use in this project. So now, first of all, I'm going to create a basic Express server. So in the source folder, I'm going to create a file with name app.js, and inside it, I'm going to require few packages that I've just installed. So first of all, I'm going to install Express, require Express, and then I'm going to install HBS, and then I'm going to install path. Currently I won't be needing these, but I'm just including beforehand. So these are the path have been added, and then I'm going to create a new Express app. I've already included that above. So in order to create Express app, I'm going to write the const app and Express function. Express is a function actually, and I have named it app. Okay, and first of all I'm going to create an empty route, so whenever we hit localhost colon 3000 or any other port we can give it to, it should hit a particular route which I'm just going to create. So first of all I'm going to add the app dot get, and then I'm going to add a simple slash. Okay, so it is an empty route which is being triggered on localhost colon 3000, and inside it I can use the response dot send, and hello, this is my first Express app. Okay, and then I need to actually listen this server on a particular port. So I'm going to create a variable here, and I'm going to name it port, and currently I can actually directly give it a port number like 3000, but it's not a good practice because we will be needing to deploy our application on different servers, and each server have different ports, and we might be deploying our application on actual domain as well. So in order to actually fetch a particular port number with respect to the server where we are going to deploy our app, we can write the process.env, and then I can write the port. If it does not exist, then by default I have assigned it 3000. Okay, so now I'm going to write the app.listen function, and it's going to listen on the particular port which I have just created. And I can also have this callback function, and inside it I can write server is listening on port, and I have given the port variable over here. So for creating an Express server, this is pretty much it we need to do. Let's try to run our project, but first of all I'm going to go to the package.json file, and inside it I'm just going to remove this test, and I'm going to add the start key colon, and then I'm going to write the nodemon initially. Nodemon is the package that whenever we are going to make changes in any of the files in our project, our server is going to be restarted. Otherwise, again and again we have to stop our server and restart our server. So it's really helpful. I'm going to give the path of my app.js file with respect to this package.json file, and then our app.js file exists in source and then the app.js. Okay, let's save it. And in order to run this particular project, we need to actually trigger app.js file, and I can simply write the key name which I have written over here, and it is the start. So I can write npm run start, hit enter, and it's going to run the code which I have written over here. And now you can see that it has shown me that server is listening on port 3000 and our server is actually running. I have opened up this URL in the browser. Let's refresh, and now you can see that it has actually shown me the hello, this is the first Express app, and which is being triggered from here, and this is the default API you can see, which I have created using the Express server. This is awesome. Let's create another API, and that API will be responsible to fetch the data from that third-party API and fetch the weather details of a particular location. So I'll be using app.get, and I can name anything to it to fetch the data, and I'm going to give the name weather, request response, and inside it I'm going to actually return something. So I can use the response.send. So let's add a weather inside it just to show you how these things work. And the server is restarted. As you can see, if I refresh, currently I'm at the home route, and I can give the name weather to it. If I hit enter, you can see that it is showing the weather. So this is how the APIs are working on different routes. Okay, first of all I'm going to handle the address. There are multiple ways we can handle address. I can pass the address using a different param like Lahore after that, but I'll be using the query param. Query param means I'll be using the question mark, and I can actually fetch the address value using the request.query.address value, and I can pass it like this from the front end. Okay, so here I'm first going to detect if not request dot query dot address. If it does not exist, I'm going to simply return a response in the form of string that address is required. Okay, and I'm also going to add a return keyword before that, because if I don't do that, it will keep on executing the rest of lines of code in this particular API. Okay, and after that I'm actually going to call a particular third-party API which I'll be using the open weather map. For now I will leave this API as it is. I'm going to create another file in the utils folder and I'm going to name it weather data.js. Okay, and inside it I'm actually going to require and then the request, and I'll be using this package to actually call a third-party API. First of all, we need to go to our open weather map website and sign up in that, create an API key. So you need to open up home.openweathermap.org and you need to sign up on this website. Once you will sign up, you will see this API's key over here. I'll just click on it and I'll be creating a new API key over here. If you don't find anything over here, you can create a new API key, name it, and you just need to copy this API key from here. Make sure you create your own API key because I'll be deleting after using this API key from my profile. And obviously I'm using the free version of it, and free version actually have a limitation that this much API calls can be made in one day using this open weather map API. All right, so I've copied that secret key which I've just created on the website. I'm going to create a new object over here and I'm going to name it open weather map, and then I'm going to create two properties inside it and I'm going to name it base underscore URL, and I'm going to name the second one secret key. All right, and inside it I'm going to copy paste the secret key which I've just created in their website, and the base URL is the URL which is provided by open weather map, and I'm going to paste over here. Make sure you write the same string inside the base URL key. Okay, and after that let's create a new function weather data, and this is going to take up couple of properties, address and the callback function. Okay, and inside it I'm going to construct the URL using the above keys that I've just created. So first of all I'm going to create a URL and I can use the open weather map dot base URL plus, and then I'm going to encode that address which is being passed over here. You can see q equals to q means that the queries, and I'm going to pass the address which I'll be receiving in this function from whoever is accessing this function outside this file. Okay, and I'm going to use the encode URI component function, and then I'm going to enter the address. Okay, let's save it, and I'm going to add a plus after that, and then I'm going to append the address with this string and app id equals to, and then plus, and then I need to pass that secret key which I have just created above, open weather map secret key. Okay, so make sure you write the same kind of URL structure which I have just created: base URL, address, app ID, and then the secret key. Okay, so I'll be using this URL to actually call the API. So let's use the request, and it's going to take an object. I'm going to pass the URL and it needs to have in the form of JSON. Let's add error and then the data. So it's going to give us an error. If there is an error, I'm just going to return using the callback, and I can actually return it true. True means if there is an error, yes, and I can actually return a string unable to fetch data, please try again. So let's append it with the error. Okay, and if there is no error, I'm going to return the callback with the false. False means there is no error, and then I'm going to write the data.body and it's going to return us the data. Okay, so there is an error here. The reason is that I actually need to close it up over here, so it should not be an object, it should be the parentheses over here. Okay, so let's save it. I'm going to actually first of all console log it the URL to actually verify if I constructed this URL right, and here I'm going to actually export it. So I'm going to write module.exports and then the weather data function which I've just created above. Okay, so I'm just going to come back in app.js file, and in this file I'm going to import that file which I've just created. So below this app express, I'm going to create a weather data equals to require, and then I'm going to write the utils and then the weather data. All right, so let's call this weather data function from here, the weather API which we created, and I'm going to call weather data, and it is going to expect the address, and address we are actually receiving from the request.query.address. And the second is the callback function which we can actually pass the error, and it's going to return us the result as well. Okay, if you remember that we actually returning the two params. One is this to detect if there is an error or not, otherwise there is no error. All right, so here I'm using the arrow function, and I'm going to detect if there is an error. Then I'm going to return response.send and then the error. Okay, and if there is no error, I'm just going to response.send and then the result. Okay, and this result should be printed in my browser because this line has to return the data directly in the browser, just like this string. Okay, so let's refresh. Address is required, so we need to pass an address. So I'm going to pass the address equals to Lahore, hit enter and refresh. You can see it is actually saying the address. I'm actually spelling it wrong here like this. So let's refresh this as well. So it's going to call an API. Now you can see that it has actually successfully called that API, and this is the URL got constructed from this file which I've just constructed over here. It has used the secret key, it has logged here, it has called the API using the request package, and it has returned the data.body from here, and then the app.js file actually calling that function, passing the address, receiving the response in the form of result, and this is the result which I have just printed. So our API is ready. Now we need to go ahead and build our UI to actually show this data on the UI, which will be rendering directly from our Node Express server. Before doing that, let's create another API handler, and it is going to detect that any of the API, if it does not exist, then we need to show it an error. So we can actually detect that not found route with the static sign over here. Okay, so inside it, I'm just going to simply return the response.send, and I can write this route does not exist. Later on, I will be rendering a page which I'll be creating over here on the UI, and that will show that this page or route does not exist. For now, I'm just going to return this string. So let me quickly show you whether it works or not. So I'm going to go to my browser and I'm just going to enter the random string, and now you can see that it's showing that this route does not exist. All right, so now let's go to our folder structure, and I'm going to create few more folders. In my public folder, I'm going to create CSS folder, and also I'm going to create another folder called JS. And inside the templates, I'm going to create the couple of folders as well. So I'm going to name it views and then the partials. So I can write the partials like this. Partials are the reusable components, means that the header, footer, or the reusable models that we can actually use it. It's not actually required in our application, but just to explain you so that you guys can learn stuff, I'm just creating partials as well in this video. And then I'm going to actually create an empty file in my views, and I'm going to name it index.hbs. hbs is the templating engine. There are a lot of other templating engines as well, like the ejs pub templates, and all a lot of other templates, but in this video I'm using the hbs templates as I've already installed in my package.json, as you can see over here. All right, so inside my hbs I can actually give the doc type. Let's add the html, let's add the head, and also in the head I can add the title. So I can give the weather app, and then in the body I can actually load stuff for now. Okay, so I can write the weather app from here. Okay, for now let's leave it like this. I'm just going to close it. Now I'll be coming back in my app.js file, and I'm going to tell my express server that this is where our files actually exist, the folder names and the paths as well. So I'll be using this path package as well, and I'll be using this hbs. So below this I'm going to actually add different paths to it. So first of all I'm going to create different variables. So I'm going to add the public path, which is for the public folder which I've just created. So path.join underscore underscore dir name, it is actually giving us the path of our project from the home directory of our system. Okay, and whenever we will be deploying our app to a server, it will not be the same path as our system, so it's always a good practice to write this keyword over here. So after this I can actually give the path with respect to the app.js file. So I can go out one time and I can give the public. So I'm telling express server that this is where our public folder exists. I'm going to copy paste this couple of more times. I need to give it the folder path for the partials as well as for the views which I've just created in the templates folder. Okay, so I'm going to name it views path, and the third variable I'm going to name it partials path. Okay, and here I'm going to use the templates folder, and inside the templates I have the views folder as well, just like this for the partials templates and then the partials. I have created these variables. Now I need to tell and pass it to express that this is where our folders exists. Okay, so first of all I will be using the app.set function, and I can name it views, and views exist in the views path. Okay, and I need to tell the hbs that this is where the partials exist. So hbs dot register partials, and then I can give it the partials path which I've just created. And then I actually need to use the public path, and to actually set the public path I can use the express server, and I can write the use function, and I can write the express.static and then the public path variable which I have just created above. One thing more that I need to do over here, I also need to tell the express that which UI library I'm using to render the UI. Currently, as you can see that I'm using the UI engine, it's the HBS, which is called the handlebars. I need to give that I'm using this HBS as my view engine. Okay, so I can write the app.set, and I can write the view engine. Jade is also for UIs. I'm using the HBS over here. Okay, so currently we have actually given and tell express that this is where our files, folders, and the name of the view engines exists. Now let me show you, and in order to verify if it works or not, I'm going to actually render this index.hbs in my home route. Whenever I will be triggering this home route over here, I want to see this index.hbs file, whatever exists inside it. Currently it will only show this weather app in h1 element. So I can actually use the render function rather than the send function, and the render function actually require the couple of params, and I can pass the index only. I don't need to pass the path because I've already given it the views folder, and in the views folder it will find if the index file exists or not. So it will find the index file and I can pass the different values from it. So I can actually pass the title and then the weather app. Okay, and this is how I can pass the dynamic data, and we can bind this data in our HBS files, whether it's index or any other stuff. So in the index.hbs I can actually use that title property to actually show the data in my title. So this is the title, and here I can actually show the same title which is being passed from that app.js file. So I'm going to save it. Let's refresh, and now you can see that in my tab weather app, and here the weather app is showing as well. It means that all of our configuration which we have written over here, also the rendering stuff and passing the data from this API route, is being successfully done. So let me quickly show you how we can actually load up a file from this not found URL. The route, actually the static route, currently I'm only returning this string. So I've created this new file 404.hbs in the views directory, and it is empty currently. Let me copy up the overall the HTML structure from the index file, and inside it will show the title whatever we will be passing from here, which I'll just be passing just now. And here let me quickly create a div. Okay, and inside this div I'm actually going to load up a partial, but for now let's load up the title. All right, and in the app.js file I'm going to load up that 404. Rather than actually using the send function, I'm using the render function. So let's use the 404 file, which will be automatically detected by this. And also I'm going to pass the title from here. So title equals to page not found. All right, so let's save it. Let's refresh, and I'm going to hit the not found URL. You can see the page not found string is visible, which is being shown from here. And let me quickly show you what is the partials, and I'm going to create a new file inside it, and I'm going to name it header.hbs. And inside this header.hbs file, again I'm going to I don't need to actually write this doc type HTML head again and again. Partial means reusable components, means that it can be the div container, it can be the only h1, it can be the any parent element that can be reused in multiple HBS or HTML files. Okay, so I'll be using this header.hbs in 404 as well as in index.hbs file. So I can write anything inside it. Let me add the header tag over here, and inside it I can actually show up that title which is being passed from the any route. It can be passed from this route, it can be passed from this route, but it should be with the same key name. Okay, so 404.hbs, I'm going to load up that partial over here. In order to load that up, I can actually use the double curly braces just like this, but I can write the arrow and then the name of that file. Okay, and you can see that I've already given the partials over here, so it will be automatically detected within the partials folder. I don't need to give the path to it. So make sure you save all of these files, and now if I refresh the page, you can see that page not found is actually showing up. And this header, I can actually copy this, I can actually paste it over here as well in my body. And if I refresh, I can go to the main route, I can hit enter. Now you can see that the title is visible over here with the different values. It means that our partial with the name header.hbs is successfully being rendered from multiple files. Okay, but quickly in the HBS I'm going to give it a class. I don't want to open this file again, so I'm going to name it main content. I'll be writing CSS for that later on, but let's quickly close this file. And also I'm going to actually load up that CSS file over here, style sheet href, and our CSS file will be in the public/css folder. So I'm going to give it the css/styles.css. I have not yet created, but I'll be creating in a moment. Okay, so let's close it. And we have this index.hps which I'll be modifying as of now. We have this header. I don't need to modify and add any class to it. Let's close it. So our backend structure is pretty much done, and now we need to work on the front end side, mainly the css file, the js file, and also this index.hps file that will be responsible to call the API which we have written in this app.js file. We'll be calling this /weather API to actually return us the data, and we'll be showing the weather data on the UI which we will be building just now. So let's create our CSS file in the CSS folder, and I'm going to name it styles.css. And in the JS folder, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to name it app.js. All right, and in my index.hps, I'm going to load up that CSS file just like I have added in my 404.hbs. It should be dot here actually. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this line. Let's paste below the title, and also I need to actually load up this app.js file in my body, but first let's build up the UI for that weather app. I'm just going to remove this title. I don't need this over here. Let's refresh, and now this is the only title coming from this route. This is the title, and I'll be just modifying its style just now using the CSS file. So header, I'm going to wrap this whole thing inside a div. Let's give it a class, and I'm going to name this class the main content, the same class that I gave in that I think 404 file. Okay, and inside this div I'm going to copy this header. Okay, so below this header let's add the article class, and I'm going to give it a class widget. Okay, and inside this article I'll be building that form and whole rectangle that I just showed you over here, this blue area. Okay, and inside this article I'm going to first create a form. Let's give it a class. So I'm going to give the class to it weather location. Okay, so inside this form I'm going to create an input with the class, and its class name would be index field, input field actually, and let's give it the type text, and then the placeholder, let's give it enter your city. Okay, let's close it, and then after this input I'll be creating a button, and it will be of type button, and let's give it a class of search button. Okay, I won't be giving it the type submit because I'll be doing it using the JavaScript. All right, so let's give it some inner text of search. So let's save it, let's refresh, and now you can see that our form is built within that article. So outside this form I'll be creating another div. So this div is going to have that class, and it can be the icon and weather info. Inside this div I'll be creating a div for that icon of the weather, this one, these clouds. Okay, so I'll be creating div class weather icon. Okay, and inside this div I'll be creating an I tag which I will not be entering inside it. This I tag will be responsible to actually load up that cloud icon over here, which I'll be dynamically loading through the JavaScript file. So another div that I will be adding here, so let's give it a class, and let's give it a class weather info. Okay, so we have given it a class, and let's create the child divs inside it, and the one for the temperature, and let's give it a span tag inside it as well. Along with this, I'm going to create another div for that weather condition. Okay, I'll be loading the content inside it from the JavaScript, so don't worry about that for now. So I think I'm done with creating the HTML. We need to create the divs for the place and the date as well. So I'll be coming outside this div, so I'm quickly going to create couple of divs. The first one will be for the place, and then I'm going to give it a class date. Okay, lastly, within the body, I'm going to load up that app.js file which I've just created. So using the script type text slash javascript, and I'm going to give it a source. So source would be js slash app.js. All right, it should be closed like this script. Here the double course should be added. Okay, the reason I've added this javascript file at the end of this body tag, because I want this whole HTML to be loaded and these classes are available in this javascript file. Otherwise, if I try to do DOM manipulation using these elements which I've just created, it will throw an error that it cannot find an element with the class name this. So it's always a good practice to create the javascript file uh, at the end of the body, which the javascript file which you have created yourself. Okay, so I think I'm done with it. Let's go to our weather app. Let's refresh. It's not showing anything. The reason is that it does not contain anything over here. Let's quickly add some content over here, which I'll be just be removing. So let's save it. Let's refresh. You can see that I've not written any CSS. That's why it's looking like this currently. So I'll just be pressing the Control Z actually. Okay. Now I'm going to copy paste the CSS. This is not a tutorial to teach you CSS. I've given the link of my repository for this project in the description of this video. You can go and you can copy the CSS for this project from that repository. If not, you can pause the video and write down the CSS yourself, which I've just added over here. So for copying it, I'm just pasting it over here. So first of all, I have actually imported these fonts and this Cloudflare's weather icons. You can actually copy these. Let me just make it big so you can see it completely. Make sure you write the same URL over here. Then I have entered the body, the main content, header, h2, the widget, weather location, and these things. Okay, so you can just pause the video at these places and you can write it down in your project. Okay, let me scroll down slowly. So I hope that you can actually watch it and write it down. Otherwise, go to the repository and copy this CSS file from there. So now I'm going to go ahead over here. Let's refresh. Now you can see that it's looking awesome. The only thing is missing is the content, which I'll be loading up through the JavaScript. And this UI is pretty much looking good currently, and we don't need to do anything inside the styles.css file. Let's close it. And we don't need to actually do anything in the app.js file. Everything we need to do is this file app.js. So let's go and write code inside app.js file, which is the front end app.js file. I'm not talking about the backend app.js file. You can name these files different if you are confusing. So first, let's also verify if the CSS is applied on this 404 page as well. So I'm going to load up the random not found page, and you can see the title is looking good, means that this main content is class is being applied on all the HBS files, which are actually including this styles.css file in them. All right, so I'm just going to close that file. I'm just going to open up the app.js file. So let's start actually DOM manipulating these elements which I've just created using their classes which I've assigned to them. So let's go. First of all, I'm going to create few variables. So let's add the var, and I'm going to create a variable weather API, which I've just created in the same application. And let's add the weather. This is the URL for the weather which I have just created in this file app.js. This is the API. Okay. After this, let's create constant variables for the DOM manipulation. So weather form, and it will be the document dot get element by ID. So I'm going to use the query selector rather than get element by ID because I've not given any IDs to my HTML. So query selector, and this is for the tag form. Okay, I have not given this is the form actually, but I can fetch it using this class. I can directly write this form because there is only one form exist in the HTML. Then I'm going to create another variable for the search, and for the search there is only one input tag, so I can directly fetch it using that input element. Okay, so document dot query selector and then the input. Okay, let's add the constant, and then I'm going to fetch an element for that icon. So I can write the weather icon, and I've given the class to it. This is the weather icon, and then inside it this I tag will be loading up that icon. Okay, so I will write the document dot query selector and then the weather icon and then I. This is the child element of that class. Okay, so then what we have next, we have this weather condition, we have this temp element temperature, and then we have this place and then the date. Okay, we have to have this weather condition as well. So let's create a weather condition, and it will be query selector weather condition. It does not have an I. Its class name is weather condition. Make sure you enter the same class name which you add over here, and then let's add the temperature span, place, and then the date. Okay, so let's create a temp element equals to document.query selector, and I'm going to write the temperature and then the span. Let's quickly add couple of more variables for place and date. So location element, query selector, and then the place, which is the class name, and lastly we have to have that date element document.query selector, and then it is of class date. All right, these functions are for fetching and selecting the data of the HTML files. It can be the HBS, it can be the JADE, PUB, or any other templating engines. All right, now what we need to do is we need to actually show up the date. Let me open up that page, main page, and let's show that current date. I don't want to fetch the date from that API which I will be using. I want to show the current date whenever this app is opened, and it does not require any API. I can use the JavaScript date class to actually show that date. So I can write the current date equals to the new date. Okay, and then I actually need to append the date element which I have actually added above, dot text content, and then I can give it the current date to it, which I'll be modifying as well. So current date. Okay, let's see what it shows. So let's refresh. Now you can see that it has shown pretty much all the data which were existing in this current date. I need to actually fetch the date only, which is the 11, and also this AUG August. Okay, just like this 10th August over here. So I need to actually first create a variable options. I need to get the month, and then long. Okay, let's create another month name variable, and then current date dot to local string, and then en dash us. Okay, and then the options. Lastly, I need to actually make this text content with that uh, current date dot get date dot get date. It's going to give me the date, and then I will be actually appending it with the comma, and then I will be giving it the month name. Okay, let's save this file. Let's refresh, and now you can see that it's showing the 11th August. It's looking pretty good. The reason I've done all of these things, because just like the get date, if I use to run the current date dot get month, it will be giving us that number in the form of month. But in order to show it in the form of word, I had to do this couple of lines. Okay, after this, I'm going to create a weather form. I will be assigning it a property and add event listener to this form, like the submit. And whenever this something is written inside this text box, hit enter or click on the search button, I want to call the API. Okay, so here I will be writing the weather form, and I will be add an event listener to it. Event listener will be the submit. Let's add the event to it, and it is an arrow function actually. Okay, so e dot prevent default. Let's actually try to get the value which is being entered in this text box. So in order to get the value, we have already added this input selector over here with the name search. So let's log the console.log and then the search.value. This is the property which we can use to get the value. Let's go to the inspect of our browser. Let's bring it down, and in the console window, let's refresh. And if I write anything inside it, press enter, you can see that it has printed over here. And I can also click on the search and it will be printing over here. So both of these event handlers are working pretty good. Let's comment this line, and we have got the value from the search.value. Okay, so then let's try to add the location element dot text content. So by default, I want to show loading over here before calling any API. So loading, let's refresh. uh, if I click on the search, you can see it's showing the loading, which I'll be removing it once the data is fetched from that API. Okay, so let's come down. Weather icon dot class name equals to empty. So weather icon is this I element. Actually, I'll be loading up that icon from from a class name, which if I go to my CSS file, these are the weather icons that gives us different classes, and using those classes we can show different weather icons over here. Okay, and I will be loading up those class names directly in the JavaScript file. But initially, whenever we hit search or hit enter by writing any city name inside this text box, we will not be showing any icon at that time until the API data is returned back. Okay, so that's why I'm making it empty, the class name. So temp element dot text content, I'll be also giving it an empty. Then I will be giving it the weather condition dot text content, and then the empty string. Okay, I'm going to create a new function, and inside that function I will be actually calling that API to fetch the weather data. Okay, so I'm going to name that function show data. Okay, and that function is going to receive the value city. All right, so this function is going to call that API, and you can see that we have actually written down the variable, and this is the API that we have written. We don't need to add the localhost colon 3000 because we are in the same application. The backend and front end both are running in the same URL. When they both have the same URL, we don't need to write the domain name here. Okay, so I'm going to write the uh, API call, but inside it, first of all, let's create another function, and I'm going to write the get weather data, and it's going to take up the city and then the callback function. Okay, let's try to call this function from inside. The reason I'm creating this much function because I want the API call to be made for the current location as well when we don't enter any city inside it, and whenever we enter any city inside, we want that call to API to be hit again. Okay, so this is the logic which I have built. You can build your own logic as well. uh, so let's call that API in the get weather data using the city which I have just received in this function. So I'm going to create the location API and then the weather API plus question mark address equals to and then the plus city. Okay, this is the API which I am actually calling, and I showed you at the start of this video that along with this API I need to actually pass that address in the form of query param, and this is the dynamic city which is being passed to it. Okay, and then I will be using the fetch function of the JavaScript to actually call the API which I have just built on the back end of this application. So this is the URL which I have built, location API, and the fetch gives us this then function which is returning the promise, and then it will return me the response, and this response also gives the JSON again, and then again, and then the response, and then arrow function again. Okay, and then I will be returning the callback with the response. All right, uh, I'm actually copying this over here, and this is pretty much it we need to do in this function. Now let's call this function from this show data, and let's try to write the get weather data, and it's going to receive the city and then the callback function. So result is going to be the callback function. All right, let's try to log that data over here in order to verify if our logic is working fine. Result, I need to call this function from here as well, so I'm going to write the show data function over here. Okay, so I can actually pass the value from the search.value over here. So let's save this file, let's refresh, and I'm going to write anything like Lahore over here. Let's hit the search, and it's loading currently. In the console window you can see that it has actually shown us the weather data over here, and this weather data is being returned from that API that we have created in app.js file. This is where it is being returned, but currently we are actually showing that data directly in the console window. I have yet to show it in my UI yet using these variables for that DOM manipulation of the HTML elements. All right, so in this console log I'm just going to comment this. I don't need this for now. I'm going to first check. You can see this, there is a property COD 200. It means that the data was successfully returned. If there is an error, means that if we pass any city which does not exist, like the ABCD city does not exist, then the code will not have a 200. So I can check if result dot cod equals to 200, then I'm going to check uh, if, first of all, let me load up the weather icon. Okay, so weather icon dot class name, and I can give it a class wi, and then the wi day, and then the cloudy. Okay, so it will be fetched over here. So if I refresh now, I have not actually dynamically added this class for loading up that clouds icon. I just want to show you. So Lahore search, and you can see that this is the default icon being loaded on the successfully response from that API. Okay, let me give something which does not exist, search, and it will not show anything because this if condition does not get true. Okay, I can actually add an else, so I can add the location element text content, and I can give it city not found. Okay, let's refresh this page. Let's try to see if we see that city not found shown. Yes, you can see this is being returned from that API. The chord value in the result is not equals to 200, that's why it's showing it like this. All right, now let's come down over here. I'll be modifying this icon later on. First of all, we need to show that name as well. So location element dot text content, and I'm going to have the result dot name. It is going to show the name here, and then we need to show the temperature. So temp element dot text content equals to and then temperature by default is very long. We need to convert it into the shortened version, and in order to convert that, I'm going to write the result dot main, and it will be in the temp variable. Okay, let me show you what it shows currently. So let's refresh, let's add Lahore search, and you can see that 302.14, it is not currently looking good. We need to actually subtract it by 273.5. Okay, so here I'm going to write minus 273.5, and it will be actually showing us uh, that we need to actually show only two values after this decimal. So we can do this by writing the 2 fixed and then the 2. Okay, so let's also show that small circle icon after that. So I can write the string dot from char code, and the char code for that circle is 176. Okay, so let's add these parentheses over here. uh, there is seems an error, so I'm going to just look around. So we have this subtraction, then 2 fixed, then this we don't need to add this parentheses here. So let's save it, let's refresh, let's enter any city search, and now you can see that it has shown this temperature perfectly right, 28.64, which is coming from that API. And then this Lahore is being shown up from that API as well. Let's try to add the London search, and this is the temperature of London currently, and this is the city being coming from that API. All right, now we need to show the description as well, the weather condition, whether there is any cloudy, there is any wind, which I showed you over here. This is where the clear sky or not. Okay, so for that we have this weather condition which we have added here, the weather condition. So let's come down over here, and I'm going to write that weather condition dot text content equals to, and then in order to get that description we have this result dot weather, and it gives us an array. So in this array we have a property called description. Okay, and let me uppercase this property to uppercase. Okay, so let's save it, let's refresh, let's give the city, hit enter. It throws an error that is not a function. Actually this has to be a small t over here. Okay, let's save it now. And it should show us that data. Now you can see that it is showing the description over here. What we need to do in this function is to actually make this icon dynamic. But there is something called we have this description which we can append along with this cloudy, but there is a chance that in the CSS that weather icons from the Cloudflare does not support all of these string. So there can be a chance that this icon is not available based upon the description being shown over here. So I'm going to actually make a check on only two values that based upon if the description is equals to rain or description is equals to fog, then I'm going to append that description with this class name along with this cloudy. Otherwise, I'm simply going to show this cloudy icon even though if it is does not make sense, because there can be hundreds of weather conditions and this description might not be supported by that Cloudflare weather icons. Okay, so here I can actually check if result dot weather and this weather actually an array, and then the description. I can actually check if it is a rain, or I can actually write the result dot weather dot description if it is a fog. Okay, let me add this double equal sign over here, and then I'm going to copy this line, paste here, and I can actually append it with the description of that. Okay, so I can write plus and then the description. Otherwise, if the description value is not equals to rain or fog, I can simply load that cloudy icon if it does not exist. So cloudy. All right, so let's save it and let's refresh. Let's try to see London, hit enter, and it's not actually rain or fog. I'm not sure that in which city there can be a rain. Scattered clouds again, I'm not sure. So Sydney, have I spell it right? Sydney not found. New York. So thunderstorm, so you can try yourself. Currently it's loading up this icon, but if the description is rain or fog, it will obviously be append that description along with this, and it will show a particular icon over here if that particular class is supported by that Cloudflare icons. Okay, so our initial setup for loading up the data for weather based upon the city name is added. Now what we need to do is we need to actually, whenever we refresh our page, it needs to detect our current location and call that API again and load up the data over here for the current location. That's why I have created this function separately and this function separately as well. So along with this, I'll be detecting the current location and will call the show data and will pass the city to it, and the rest of logic will be handled by itself and I don't need to do anything else. So above this, I will be actually detecting my current location, and in order to detect my current location, I need to use the navigator class provided by the JavaScript. First of all, I need my browser to show me the notification that if I want to allow to share my current location with this application or not. So in order to do that, I will first be write the geolocation, and it should be in navigator. Okay, it will make sure that the browser have actually permission to share the location with this website. All right, and then I will be actually showing that loading again, because whenever I refresh the page it should show the loading, which I'll be removing it once the data is loaded, which will be automatically updated in that function which I've already created over here, this one, show data. All right, so here I will be writing the location element, text content, let's show the loading like this. After this, I will be using the navigator dot geolocation dot get current position. Okay, and in this parentheses, I actually need to close it, and in this parentheses I will be putting up a function which is the position. Okay, let's close it, and in this function I will be fetching the latitude and the longitude from that position provided by navigator geolocation get current position. So I will be writing the lat equals to the position dot chords dot latitude, and then const longitude position dot chords dot longitude. Okay, and I will be using a third party API which is public. I don't need to create any API for that on their website, so I'll just be copy pasting one long line. I have named it API URL, and this public API is called the nominate im.openstreetmap.org slash reverse question mark format equal to JSON and lat, and I need to give it a lat variable which I have just added over here, and then the long variable I've added over here, LON. Make sure you spell it right over here. Okay, and it is going to give me the city of that current location. Okay, I will be passing lat long to it. I'll be using the fetch function of the JavaScript. So let's pass the API URL, and then let's get the response from it, response, and then the response.json. Let's write another then data arrow function, and then I'm going to check if data exists, and data dot address and data dot address dot city, and this is where we have actually fetched the city of the current location wherever this website is going to get opened. Okay, so inside it I can actually fetch the city from the data dot address dot city, and then I can actually call that show data function which I have created and pass the city. Okay, I can obviously add some error handling that city does not exist, and I can add different catch block over here as well for that function fetch function that I have created. And also for this function I can actually create an error function as well, so function error, and I can log anything. And for this geolocation, I can actually write an else statement over here, and this else we can actually show a message that geolocation is not available on this browser which is using to open this web application. All right, and just log it or anything you want to do inside it. Currently our focus is this show data. Let's save this file and let's see if it works or not. I've already allowed my localhost 3000 to actually get my location, so I think it will not ask me to allow it to have my location. If I refresh, it's showing loading, and I'm waiting for it to show the data of my current location. So it's keep on loading. Let's try to show some errors over here to see it might not be coming over here. So I'm going to write the city not found. Okay, and also let's try to print this error over here. So console.log error, and also in this function, and I can write the console.log error dot message. Okay, and also let's try to add this geolocation is not available on this browser. Okay, so now I'm going to save this file. Let's refresh. It's loading. So it says data, it's date. All right, I have misspelled this data, so it has to be data. Let's save this file, And now if I refresh it, it's going to detect my current location, and you can see guys, it's showing the data of my current location, the weather data. This is the temperature, the description, the city, and obviously the date which is being fetched from the new date. All right, and also let's now try to load up another data for another city, and now you can see that it is showing the data for the different city along with the current location. If I refresh, it's going to remove everything from the text box. It's going to detect my current location and show the data for that current location. All right, so it's looking so good, and this is an awesome application that we have built in this tutorial. If you have liked and learned a lot from this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe my channel. I am putting a lot of effort creating these tutorials, and don't forget to share my videos with your fellows as well. Thank you so much for watching guys. See you in the next video.